The meeting where I disappeared the first used to think loyalty was everything. That if you showed up early, stayed late, gave your all, and never made waves, someone would notice. That your family, especially if you worked with them, would see you, appreciate you, protect you. But that illusion shattered one Tuesday morning. The lights above the front desk buzzed softly as I polished the candy bowl, same as I did every day. I had just checked the conference schedule, nothing unusual, when the glass doors opened. My father stepped out. His tone? Flat, like gravel under boots. "Callie," he said. "Conference room BNOW. No smile. No explanation. Just an order." I blinked. There wasn't a meeting on the calendar with my name on it. But I followed, past the glass walls, into the boardroom where the air itself felt colder. Every seat was taken, except one. At the very end, farthest from where my father stood, Mark, my older brother, gave me a smug little smile and then looked away. Dad didn't wait. "We've been evaluating company structure," he announced. "And some roles just don't align anymore." Then he looked straight at me. "Your position has been redefined. We need professionals running this place. You've outgrown reception. Effective immediately, your duties are concluded." The world didn't tilt. It shattered. 7 years. 7 years of holding the fort when people quit, when systems failed, when clients raged. I trained new hires, memorized schedules, even ran logistics in emergencies. But none of it mattered. They laughed. Some of them, I heard it. The snickers, like I was the punchline. "I don't understand," I whispered. "I know this company inside and out." Dad didn't flinch. "But you don't belong in the room where decisions are made. You're not strategic." It wasn't a conversation. It was a sentence. A verdict. I stood up. Slow. Silent. But before I reached the door, they opened again. A man in a navy suit walked in like he owned the oxygen in the room. It was Thomas Graham, CEO of Lindale and Company, our largest client. My father had tried for years to impress him. He never showed up unannounced. Until now. He didn't glance at my father, or Mark, or any of them. "Where's Callie?" he asked. I froze. He saw me, and his face softened. "There you are," he said warmly. "I've been calling you all morning. That delivery chaos last week? You saved us 6 figures. I came to thank you in person." The room was still. I could feel every pair of eyes burning holes through me. Thomas turned to the board. "This company runs on relationships," he said. "And Callie is the reason we're still doing business with you." Thought someone ought to say it out loud. Not a sound. Not a chuckle. Not a breath. Dad's face was pale. Mark looked like he'd bitten into something sour. And in that silence, I felt it. Something in me cracked open. For years, I tried to prove I was enough, that I mattered. But maybe I never had to prove it to them, because the right people already knew. Thomas left with a handshake and a nod. I didn't say much. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. My chest was burning. I walked back to the front desk and sat down. Not because I was staying, but because I needed a moment to breathe. Behind the glass walls, voices rose. My father's voice, sharp, Mark's, frantic. They weren't talking about quarterly numbers anymore. They were talking about me. By 3 p.m., the whispers started. Someone brought me coffee who never made eye contact before. Leah, a junior analyst, stopped by, cheeks flushed, voice hushed. "Did that really happen?" she asked. I didn't answer. She didn't need one. That evening, I didn't go home. I drove across town to an old coffee shop I used to haunt in college. I parked, engine off, stared at the windshield, fogged it up with nothing but questions. Was I too ambitious? Too available? Had I made it too easy to forget I was more than the receptionist? Then, a tap on the window. Leah. She held out 2 coffees, awkward but sincere. "You talk about this place a lot," she said, nodding to the cafe. "Especially when things are hard." We stood outside in the cold, leaning on my car, not saying much. Then she handed me a folded napkin. "A list. Names. People from every department. They want to help," she said, "because you've helped them, quietly, for years, and they haven't forgotten." That night, I lay awake. Something had shifted. They stripped me of a title, but not my value. And I wasn't walking away with my head down. Not yet. By the next morning, something was different. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. But I felt it in the way people paused just a little longer when I walked past their desks. The way conversations stopped mid-sentence, only to start again in awkward murmurs the second I was out of earshot. The receptionist, who wasn't just a receptionist anymore. I sat at the front desk like I always did, answered phones, routed calls, sorted mail, but I didn't smile out of obligation. I didn't soften my voice to sound less threatening. And when Mark walked by with his usual fake morning cowl, I just nodded. That was enough. I had stopped playing their game, and people noticed. They noticed when the CFO, a man who had never spoken more than 2 words to me in 7 years, nodded at me in the hallway. They noticed when the head of marketing asked for my insight on a client pitch just to get a fresh perspective. They noticed when clients started asking for me by name. It started with Amir, logistics director in Dubai, then Clara in Chicago, then Rowan Financial. Email after email, call after call. Can we speak to Callie? Not Mark, not my father. Me, the woman they never thought twice about, was the one holding the company together. I didn't announce anything. Didn't call attention to myself. I just did what I always did. Solved problems. Quietly. Precisely. But every call that bypassed the executive chain, that was a crack in their illusion. And their cracks were growing. By Thursday, Mark cornered me near the break room. You need to stop, he hissed. This thing you're doing, making a scene, stirring gossip. I took a slow sip of my tea. Making what a scene? He glanced around. Clients. Staff. You're undermining leadership. I looked him in the eye for the first time in years. Calm, controlled. Maybe leadership should have read the room before blindsiding me. His jaw clenched. This is business. It's restructuring. No, I said. It's ego. He walked off, fast and stiff, like he couldn't stand the way that sentence landed. He was unraveling, and he knew it. That afternoon, I got a call. Mr. Graham's assistant. Callie, she said. Thomas would like to invite you to the quarterly leadership dinner. My heart paused. I'd heard of that dinner. Private, off the record, only for senior partners and top executives. I'm not part of the leadership team, I said. You are to him, she replied. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the invitation. It wasn't just dinner, it was a declaration, an endorsement. Thomas Graham was telling the world, and my family, who he believed the real leader was. I opened a message to my father, then closed it. Let him find out the way I did, in a room full of people, too stunned to look him in the eye. Friday came faster than I expected. I took the day off. No one questioned it. At 7:00 p.m., I walked into the Bayfront restaurant, glass walls glistening with reflections of the city, heart beating in my throat. Black dress, hair pinned, posture straight, confidence worn like armor. Thomas stood, smiling. Callie, he said warmly. I meant every word I said in that boardroom. We sat. You've been the most competent, most consistent person we've dealt with here. If they can't see that, it's not your failure, it's theirs. I nodded, holding back the emotion rising in my throat. Thank you. Then he leaned in, voice low. Off the record, do you even want to stay there? The question hung in the air like a challenge. And I didn't answer right away. Because, honestly, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to walk away. Let them deal with the fallout they created. But another part, the part that stayed late, that held the weight of this company when no one else would, that part wanted to be there, to finish what I started. I'm not done yet, I said finally. He smiled. Good. Because I might need your help. That drive home was different. The streetlights weren't just blurs in the window. They were signposts. Something had shifted. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. And they had no idea what was coming. By Monday, I returned to the office. But everything had changed. Not my desk. Not my title. But me. And power, real power, doesn't need a nameplate. It reveals itself in the way people move around you. They asked for my opinions. They asked for my memory. Because I knew where everything was, who to call, and what it really took to keep clients happy. Even the executives were nervous. I could feel it. Mark stopped by again, all fake smiles and surface warmth. Everything okay this week, Callie? Translation, are you planning something? Answer, absolutely. Because over the weekend, Thomas and I spoke again. This time about the future, about a joint venture his company was planning, a deal that would redefine everything, a high stakes collaboration that required trust and consistency. And, according to him, you're the face they know, Callie, not Mark, not your father, you. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. And if this company had any hope of surviving the storm ahead, the truth needed a voice. Mine. So I started building something no one expected, a quiet ledger, a living archive. I pulled emails, notes, logs, everything I had ever done to clean up after executives, every mistake I covered, every fire I put out, every client I kept from walking out the door. It wasn't revenge, it was documentation. A paper trail no one could erase. Then, lunch with Denise. She'd been in marketing for years, always kind, always cautious. But this time, she slid me a flash drive. "What's this?" I whispered. "Meeting minutes," she said. "Internal memos. Files I was told to delete." "Why didn't you?" she smiled. "Because I've been underestimated, too. That night, I stayed late. Everyone else was gone. I turned off the lights, plugged in the flash drive, and opened the folder. And there it was. Emails between my father and Mark, planning my exit. Weeks before the board meeting. Phrases like, "Keep her out of the loop. She's too visible. Clients are starting to notice." And then, the smoking gun. A strategy memo drafted by Mark, suggesting my duties be phased out gradually, that my departure be spun as natural restructuring. It was dated 14 days before they humiliated me in that boardroom. They hadn't just dismissed me. They orchestrated it, quiet, calculated. But they made one mistake. You don't erase someone who's been your backbone for 7 years without leaving fingerprints. And I had all of them. By sunrise, I had everything I needed. A folder full of truth, a timeline no one could deny, a quiet storm gathering in my hands. But I didn't rush. That kind of power, it isn't loud. It waits and watches. At 9:47 a.m. that Tuesday, I made 3 copies. One stayed with me, one went to Thomas Graham, and the third, sealed in a plain envelope, I tucked away for someone who might need it later. Then I walked into the office like it was any other day. But everything had changed. At 10 a.m., my father called a leadership meeting. First one since the day he cut me down in front of the board. I wasn't invited. Of course I wasn't. But I already knew the agenda. Word was, the joint venture with Lindale and Company was on ice. Thomas wasn't signing anything until he had assurances about leadership stability. And stability? Well, that was me. I stood outside the conference room, watching through the glass. Mark was pacing. My father sat stiff at the head of the table, pen tapping a rhythm of denial. The others whispered, shifted, looked everywhere but at each other. Then Thomas walked in. Not alone. He carried a briefcase. But more than that, he carried presence. The kind that made people sit straighter, breathe quieter. I waited 30 seconds, then opened the door and stepped inside. Silence. Not shocked silence. Not hostile silence. Just realization. Thomas gestured to the seat beside him. "Callie, please." My father's voice cut through like frost. "She's not on the leadership team." Thomas didn't blink. "She is now." I sat down. Not just to take a chair, but to take back the space I had been denied. This wasn't about titles anymore. This was about truth. And I had it in spades. Thomas started the meeting, his tone calm, measured, but beneath it, steel. "Before we talk about the joint venture," he said, "we need to talk about something deeper." He let the word land. Trust. You could hear the word echo in the corners of that boardroom. He looked each executive in the eye, slowly, deliberately. "I've watched this company for a year," he said, observed the culture, the communication, the patterns. Then he reached into his briefcase, pulled out the folder, my folder, laid it on the table in front of my father. "I've reviewed documents," Thomas said, "that show a pattern of behavior, a targeted effort to minimize and remove one of the most capable people in this building. He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. My father didn't move. Mark looked like he was trying not to breathe. This is absurd, my father finally said. Callie was a receptionist. She was never. He trailed off. Never what? Never supposed to matter? Never supposed to rise? I turned to him, voice low, steady. Never meant to be more than the girl at the front desk? The one who smiled, scheduled, stayed late, and kept your empire from cracking? The room stayed frozen. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I cleaned up mistakes no one else saw, covered missed deadlines, fixed botched pitches, held client accounts together with duct tape and loyalty. I looked at Mark, and I did it without asking for credit. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Across the table, Denise gave me the smallest nod. Quiet but undeniable. Thomas leaned forward. Let me be clear, he said. If Callie isn't involved in a senior capacity, there is no deal. He paused. And if she walks, we walk. There it was. The hammer. The line in the sand. My father's jaw tightened. You're letting personal feelings cloud business. Thomas looked at him like he was seeing a stranger. No, he said. You did. For a moment, no one moved. Then my father slowly opened the folder. He read the first page, then the second. And I watched the color drain from his face, not from guilt, from exposure. Because this wasn't a feeling, this was proof. Signed. Time-stamped. Traced. When he looked up, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Uncertainty. Callie, he said quietly, why didn't you come to me? I met his gaze without blinking. I did, I said. For 7 years. He didn't answer, because there wasn't one. After the meeting, people scattered. Some averted their eyes. Others hovered like they wanted to say something but didn't know how. Shame's like that. It sticks in the throat. Mark didn't speak. He just followed our father out the door, head down, shoulders tight. I stayed behind. Thomas turned to me. You handled that with grace. I shook my head. I handled it with facts. He smiled. Same thing, in your case. I walked back through the office, past desks, past people, past the old reception area where someone else now sat, a temp, probably. She gave me a polite little wave, unsure of who I was or what I'd just done. I nodded. Because I didn't need that chair anymore. I had earned a seat at the table. Not because someone handed it to me. Because I claimed it. And maybe for the first time, they finally saw who I'd been all along. A week after the meeting, they changed my nameplate. It was quiet. No announcement, no ceremony. Just a small brushed steel plaque on a new office door. Callie Hart, Client Strategy Lead. No more front desk, no more fake smiles or shallow greetings. Now I sat at the table. And this time, they asked me what I thought. They listened. But the title wasn't what mattered. It was how I saw myself, and how they finally did. For years, I believed I had to work twice as hard to be seen half as clearly. I stayed late. I cleaned up their messes. I became indispensable and invisible. Now I knew better. Respect isn't something you earn by being quiet. It's something you claim with boundaries. And I had finally learned how to draw mine. Still, it wasn't all clean slates and congratulations. The air was different now. Lighter, but charged. My father barely spoke to me. When he did, it was clipped, measured, like he didn't quite know who I was anymore. Or maybe, now that he saw it, he wasn't sure how to handle the truth. We crossed paths in the hall. He'd nod. I'd nod back, but the warmth was gone. Then came the email. Subject line, staff update effective immediately. Mark Langston will be stepping down from his role as vice president. That was it. No explanation. No thank you. No farewell message. Just silence. But I knew the truth. He was given a choice. Step down quietly or face what I had documented. I didn't feel triumphant when I read that line. I felt steady. That's the only word I have for it. Steady. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about integrity. About making the truth too loud to ignore. The following Monday, I was invited to a roundtable session with key partners, including Thomas Graham, Clara from Rowan Financial, and 2 other execs I'd only ever heard about in passing. I didn't even know meetings like this existed until now, the kind where decisions are made before memos are written. where futures are shaped quietly, behind closed doors. And now I was one of the voices in that room. Not because of politics, because of proof. I left the meeting with my mind buzzing, and when I got back to my office, I saw an envelope. Plain, no name on it. Just two words, written in careful handwriting I knew all too well, for Callie. The first stared at it for a long time before I opened it. Inside, a note. No company letterhead, just him, my father. Callie, you've always had more strength than I knew how to handle. You didn't just earn your place, you defended it, even when I made it impossible. That kind of resilience. I didn't teach you that. You taught it to yourself. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know. I'm proud of you. Dad, I read it 3 times. It didn't erase what he did. It didn't change the years I spent waiting for recognition that never came. But it was a beginning, a crack in the armor, and maybe a sign that he was learning something too. That night, I stayed late. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I walked the halls of that building, the same ones I used to rush through, clutching coffee trays and urgent printouts. I passed the lobby, the break room, the old front desk, where I'd answered calls, filed contracts, fixed the office printer more times than I could count. And I realized something: we don't just inherit legacies, we reshape them. My father built this company with discipline, drive, and order, but I was helping rebuild it with something just as vital: dignity. A week later, I launched a program, something new, something no one had thought to do before. Frontline to Future, a mentorship track for junior staff, for receptionists, assistants, interns, for the ones like me who worked in silence while others took the credit. It wasn't flashy. It didn't come with bonuses or big titles. It came with something better: visibility. A space to be seen before you had to fight for it. We held our first meeting in the upstairs training room, the same one I used to tidy for executive retreats. 12 people showed up. By the second session, it was 30. And every time one of them spoke, really spoke, I saw it. The shift. The thing that happens when someone finally realizes they're not invisible. That someone sees them, hears them, that they matter. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was proud. Not because I'd been given power, but because I finally knew I never needed their permission to use it. This place, it wasn't perfect. It probably never would be. But now, there was space for voices like mine, and for voices that were still rising. And I'd protect that space like a quiet fire, because power doesn't always look like a title. Sometimes, it looks like a name on a napkin, a flash drive handed across a table, a list of people who remembered. Sometimes, it looks like walking back into the same office and not shrinking. Just standing taller. Because you know exactly who you are now. The legacy I chose time past. Not a lot, but enough. Enough to see the changes take root. Enough to feel the shift in the air, not just around me, but through the whole company. People walk differently now. Slower, straighter, more aware. Like, they knew someone was finally watching, but not the way they used to be watched. This time, they were being seen. Really seen. And when someone spoke in a meeting, even if they were new, even if they didn't have a title, people listened. That wasn't magic. That was culture changing. And it wasn't just me. It was the voices I had amplified. The people who were once quiet, now making decisions, guiding teams, calling out old habits that had no place in the future we were building. Some days, I'd catch myself standing by the window of my new office, looking out, remembering, not with anger, with clarity. Because when you survive something like that, when you're humiliated, stripped of your worth, and left to fade, you come back different. Not harder, just clearer. And I was clear now. Clear about what mattered. Clear about who I was. Clear about what I was building. I never wanted to become the kind of leader who closed the door behind her. I wanted to be the one who held it open. And waited, my father and I. We never fully patched things. We spoke, here and there, in meetings, in emails, once over coffee, but something had cracked between us. And even though we were both too proud to admit it, we knew it might never go back to the way it was. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that's what happens when truth enters a room and stays. It rearranges the furniture. It reveals what was hidden. And once you see clearly, there's no going back. One afternoon, I walked by the front desk. The temp, her name was Bella, was on a call, typing notes one-handed, still smiling. She was sharp, calm, already handling twice the workload she was hired for. I waited until she hung up, then asked if she had a minute. She looked nervous, like I was going to scold her for something, but I smiled and handed her an envelope. Mentorship acceptance letter, I said. I've been where you're sitting. Every second you think no one notices. I did. I do. She blinked fast, nodding. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Months went by. Then a year. We grew, not just in numbers, but in strength. Departments that used to hoard power started collaborating. The board meetings became less about hierarchy, more about direction. And frontline to future? It flourished. The first class of mentees, 6 of them got promoted within that year. 3 of them into leadership. One of them, Leah, now runs the internal communications team. Same Leah who brought me coffee that day outside the cafe. Funny how life loops back on itself like that. People ask me now what changed. What broke the cycle? What made everything shift? And I always give the same answer. It wasn't the big speech. It wasn't the title. It was the moment I stopped trying to be accepted and started acting like I already belonged. Because the truth is, I always did. I just forgot. They just didn't want to admit it. And power, real power, isn't loud. It doesn't shout or throw things or fire people in boardrooms. Real power walks in, calm as water, and stays standing when others try to disappear it. That's what I became. A quiet storm. A steady flame. And the legacy I chose to leave behind wasn't built on ego or revenge. It was built on presence, consistency, on showing up when no one else did, on seeing others when no one else bothered to, and when the time came, on finally seeing myself. So, if you're sitting behind a desk right now, waiting, wondering if anyone notices you, let me be the one to say it. I do. And you? You're not just the role they wrote on your badge. You're the reason things hold together when no one's watching. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, they'll realize it too. Just make sure when that day comes, you already know who you are. Because that's the real promotion, the one no one can take away.